Kathryn Bigelow's latest movie, Detroit, is hitting theaters nationwide this week, and we have the review right here on Screen Junkies News. Hi, I'm Dan Merle.
And I'm Roth Cornett, and it looks like we have probably our second in the Oscar race for a summer release, Detroit, following Nolan's Dunkirk.
Yeah, this is going to be a movie that's in the award show discussion for, I think, a few different categories. There's a lot to unpack with this movie, and this had a lot of different effects on me. So I want to just jump right into it. First of all, let's just kind of lay out the plan for anyone that doesn't know. Detroit takes place during the Detroit riots in 1967, largely about the incident at the Algiers Motel. Obviously, there was a conflict between police officers, the African-American community there, fraught, obviously, with politics. The 60s, 67 particularly, was a very fraught year nationwide. But I found this to be a very harrowing movie. This is not an easy movie to watch, nor should every movie be easy to watch. But I'm curious what you thought, because like I said, this movie really kind of impacted me in a few different ways. So I just really want to kind of unpack it. I'm curious what you thought.
So I feel like I agree with you. This is not an easy movie to watch. It is, I do think, an important movie to watch. And you know, it's easy to say something like that, but it actually is, because she's certainly locating an event that happened in the past, but it is all too real today, as we know. And you're certainly very aware of that as you're watching the film. And I found it remarkably harrowing to watch. I found it Kathryn Bigelow, as a general rule of thumb, is very effective at creating tension. Yeah. And that is no more true than in this film. It was for me, to the point that I eventually had to stand to the side of the theater so that I could occasionally just move and pace.
Oh, wow.
I tried not to get into anybody's way while doing that, but that was how impactful I found the film. Structurally, it's set up to create a sense of chaos, particularly in the first act, or the preamble heading into the latter part of the first act into the second act.
Right.
The bulk of the film, as you said, takes place during the Algiers Hotel event. And that's where it's creating this sense of chaos, and she sets up where this event came from, what was happening in the community, what sort of sparked it. And then you just feel out of control for a period of time,
right? Like
the characters. But then it pauses long enough for you to get to know these characters, and for the true horror of the actually quiet, calmer incident to unfold. And we can talk about what that is. And then it deals with the aftermath. So in that way, I think it's incredibly structurally effective.
That's interesting, because the structure was the main thing that I wanted to talk about, because I felt that the centerpiece of this movie is what happens at the Algiers. That is really, I think, the thrust of this movie, and where its power lies, the bulk of its effectiveness lies.
Do you want to talk about what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, basically there are the police and the National Guard are in Detroit to kind of quell the riots. There are shots reported to have been fired from this motel, where there are several people gathered. The police come in and essentially start questioning. They call it questioning, investigating where the shots came from, who fired the shots, is there a danger? And it is largely a group of white police officers and National Guardsmen, and a group of predominantly black people staying in the motel. And it's horrifying, because you see how this was kind of regarded as standard procedure, and Will Poulter is kind of the ringleader of the police officers that we see in this movie. Will Poulter he's no longer, I used to not denigrate him, but I used to jokingly call him Eyebrows Kid from the Maze Runner. He's not that anymore.
Nope.
Because I thought he was very effective in The Revenant, and in this movie he is just terrifying, because he is a police officer who, to him, this is investigation.
Yeah.
And if you have to kill somebody, well, that's part of the job.
And what's crazy, and it really, look, every single performance in this film is phenomenal, and it completely locates you in this world and delivers the reality and elevates the film and the sense of tension. John Boyega, Anthony Mackie. For me, it's Algie Smith who plays Larry. I'll return to that in a minute. That's the centerpiece of the film, and he delivers a beautiful performance, just heartbreaking. But man, Will Poulter, because he, as the actor, is allowing himself to believe that he is right.
Yeah.
To believe that he's really acting in a
He's
compassionate
acting in
way.
what he believes is the best. He's like, I'm just here trying to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, this is the best possible
Why is everyone
solution.
being so difficult and and it's not. He does evil things in this movie, but the movie doesn't judge him. It's very dispassionate as far as like, this is a very frenetic movie, and I felt very in the moment, but it doesn't judge its characters in the way that it's telling you what to think. You kind of just see these things, and I think there's only one way to draw what's happening. But I liked that about it, in that it's almost verite. You're almost just in the moment, and things are unfolding. And the second act, like I said, is really what I kind of keyed in on, because I found myself getting... restless would be a word, but not restless in the sense that I was bored. I was kind of, as I'm in the movie, like, why am I feeling this way? And I figured out that as a viewer, I just wanted to get out of there. It was so relentless and just escalatingly awful, and I, as a viewer, wanted to get out of there. And I think that is a testament to what Kathryn Bigelow has done with this movie. Is let's just cut through the levels of this. Like, as a white male, that is a situation that I have never been in, and I'm not likely to ever be in that situation. So for Kathryn Bigelow to make a film that speaks to me as a viewer and is able to kind of bring that out, and this is a shadow of what it would be like to actually be in a situation like this. But this idea of helplessness and there is no escape. For her to be able to make a film that can speak to me as a viewer in that way and translate that experience, I think that is why this is a film that people should see. Yeah. Because I don't think that everyone can relate. You hear the stories on the news, unfortunately now, and I don't mean in history books. You hear the stories on the news, and to some people it's just stories, because it's just a story of what happened, and they're situations you've never been in and can't relate to. Kathryn Bigelow is able to translate some of that, and I found that kind of affected me pretty profoundly to be kind of transported into that moment and find, just as a viewer, I wanted to get out of there. I wanted nothing more than to just be out of this situation. For these characters, I wanted these cops to just stop it, because the escalation just advances and advances, and every time you think that maybe the right decision is going to be made, it's not made, and it just keeps going. And I think that is really where the power of this movie lies. The other parts we can talk about in a second, but for me, this is where the impact of the film was strongest, was in that middle kind of centerpiece part of the movie. I agree 100%. And I've never been in that situation, and I'm unlikely to be in that situation. And I agree with you. That's what narrative filmmaking can do. I mean, a great documentary can do it as well, but that is what narrative filmmaking can do. It can locate you into lives. It can create a sense of empathy. It can create a sense of catharsis. And when it's done really well, that's what happens. We gain compassion. And what's crazy about this movie is that I'm with you. That's why I had to get up. I couldn't stand it. And yet I'm taking in the fact that if I were in that situation, I couldn't get up and go to the side of the theater and pace. There would be nothing to do but be there and live in it and be terrified and have my life in the hands of these maniacs who are out of control and have all the power. And the heartbreaking thing about this film too is that you see 4 or 5 different times when people who aren't crazy, who kind of have the right idea, just walk away. They could step in, and they don't. Because they don't want to be involved. They don't want to get their hands dirty. Because they don't want accountability, and they don't want to deal with the mess. And it is just totally, totally heartbreaking, because that's us in a way. That's society, right? That is the viewer. That is the audience. We don't know what to do. We feel helpless, so we don't do anything. And she locates you in so many different POVs at once, uncomfortable positions, because you have to see Will Poulter's delivering a performance where you understand he thinks he makes sense, and you don't want to be in that guy's mind. He doesn't understand why everybody has a problem with this. And that's the brilliance of this film. I will say you're right that act is where the meat of the movie is. But there's another movie called Irreversible that I do not suggest you see. It's a French film, and it's horrifying. But it does a similar thing where the structure of the film is that the camera's moving like this, and it's very, very chaotic. And then it just locks off. And it's one shot for this horrible event.
and it makes you feel that. It makes you feel trapped. It makes you feel like you can't breathe. It puts you into the position of the person in the scene.
Yeah.
And that's what Bigelow does. And that's why I think that some people might not like the structure of this film. I think it's brilliantly structured.
See, this is where we disagree, because I think that you can. I think a lot of people think that I think that people should see this movie. I think it is an important movie, and I think that it has a lot to say. I think that people sometimes think that if you think that, you also have to say that the movie's perfect. And I think there's a difference between the effect of a film and the aesthetics of it, because the effect of it on me was profound, and I think that that's a big reason why I'm recommending that people see it. Aesthetically, I'm not sure that the structure didn't work for me. I felt that the beginning of it was a kind of very wide scope, wide-ranging historical drama that was kind of giving you the background of Detroit. Then you have the centerpiece of the movie, and then you have this kind of third act, which deals with the aftermath. And as story, I think that there are three well-rendered segments. I thought that it was a really good picture of the historic context of the movie in the first part. The second part is just unbearably tense and difficult to experience as a viewer. And then the third act is kind of more of a social commentary on that time. It ties more directly into ours, the sense of injustice. And I feel like individually, those are three really solid segments. They didn't necessarily coalesce for me. I feel like the movie lost a little bit of focus and a little bit of its impact as it made those transitions. Not that they're badly made. I just think that structurally it wasn't necessarily, as a whole, the movie didn't paint the whole picture. Not that it's bad. It just knocks me down from saying, like, the entire film for me worked as effectively as that middle part did.
So I feel like the reason that I like it is for the reasons that I said, which is that I feel like it takes you through the emotional trajectory. It locates you in the space of the time and the chaos of it, but it also gives you enough breathing room in that second section to actually get to know these characters and to empathize with them and to follow their journeys.
And that's where the movie kind of hooked me. Was the first one, you're bouncing around so much. I was kind of like, I didn't have anything quite. I was like, what do I latch onto? What do I latch onto? The second act is what gave me, you get so many different places to kind of latch onto as a viewer, people to connect to, characters to connect to. You learn more about all these characters. And then I feel like you lose a lot of that in the third act, because then you're only with a few of them.
Well, the through line for me, 100% in this film, and the heart of the film, and I don't know that other people would agree, is Algie Smith, and he plays this character, Larry, who is a singer, and he's in a band, and he's, look, this is a dramatization, piecing together the facts. This is written by Mark Bull, who also wrote Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker. It's a well-researched film, but this is a dramatization because it's a movie. But this is a real man, and he was there, and these are pieces of his experience in life. And the reason is he's in this moment, this pinnacle moment where he's about to have his dream come true and take the stage and launch his singing career with his group. And unfortunately, and it's canceled at the last minute, right? Because there's all this unrest and they have to go home and there's a curfew. So he stops off at the Algiers Hotel and he gets a room with his friend and he goes through this event, and the trauma, the extent, and that's so real. The extent of the trauma destroys his life. It makes him, well, it doesn't destroy his life, I shouldn't say that, but it makes him take choices and make sacrifices that he may not have otherwise. He could have had a very different life if this hadn't happened to him. And because I'm following him the whole time, and because I was so felt the heartbreak of his loss and the trauma of everything that he had lost that night, I did feel like it was cohesive, and I felt like it took me on the emotional journey. And one last really quick thing is that third act, which is supposed to make us think of today. Yeah. Sometimes you're able to.
You don't even have to draw analogies. You don't even have to draw comparisons. It is today. We see it on the news.
The past is why people are going to be willing to look at that and go, there must be this has now gone on for how many years? Right. This must change. Like that, I think, is the hope of the film.
And I agree that it does draw parallels. And I think if the movie had committed from the beginning and then toward the end to following Larry and Algie Smith all the way, but I feel like it's scattered, and then you lock in and then it's scattered a little bit. And that's where I lost a little bit of my focus. And again, I think that the three parts are trying to say, so it's a historical document, human drama, societal commentary. And again, it's those three things mixed together is what knocked the film down a little bit for me. However, that's not to say that I'm not recommending this and that I don't think people should go see it. I think people should absolutely go see this movie. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be a challenging watch. I don't think it's going to be one that you rewatch over and over again. It is difficult, but I found it to be a really startling portrait into a historical situation and to be quite frank, a cultural situation into which I had not had that sort of experience before. So it's a recommendation from me.
It's a strong recommendation for me too, for all of the reasons that you said. I think it is an important movie that is going to open up conversation. And there's all kinds of conversations that we can have around this film. We're not going to have them all in this review. About a million different things that we could talk about. But I think it's a great film. I think it's extremely well executed. It is remarkably well acted. I do think you should go see it for its merits as a film. But as you say, we should go see
artistically and culturally. I think they're two separate reasons to go see it, but I think they're both
valid and important reasons to see it and to start that conversation. Let us know what you thought of Detroit in the comments below. Dan, where can the people find you?
The people can find me here, pretty much. We are going to continue to review the movies coming out this week and in the months to come. And Detroit and Dunkirk, as you mentioned, the two big so far awards contenders to come out of this summer. But as we mentioned before, we are entering the fall season, and that picture's only going to get more crowded. So we will be bringing you those movies as they come out through the fall and the winter and going into award season. I think it's already going to be a crowded one.
I think so too. Dark Tower too later this week, so we'll see where that lands.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. Till next time.